Allah, please.
You're listening to Truth to Power Live with Dumisani Washington.
Truth to Power Live with Dumisani in Washington. It's great to be with you all on today. I'm happy to talk differently and approach this a little bit differently. I am in actually the the club, the United Club, as I am in the airport here at Dallas Airport in DC, headed for Poland. I am honored to be the guest of the European Jewish Association, their annual observance of the Holocaust, where we go to Auschwitz, and also the annual remembrance of Kristallnacht, which happened this month as well. Doubly honored, even more so than that, right? To be able to go. This is not something that, from what I'm told from the association, it's usually focused on Europeans coming from different parts of Europe. Every once in a while, they'll reach out to someone else, and I was one of those people, honored to go. So it's just funny. And I hope that you all can hear me okay. I'm talking softer just because I'm not completely secluded, so I'm not able to kind of do all the yelling and everything. Some people hear me yell it all the time. So yeah, it's good. You stop all the yelling. So hopefully everybody can hear me okay. I think the testing is good. Someone gives me a thumbs up out there. I think I got a couple of thumbs up and everything. So not only do about another hour and a half, I will be boarding the flight that goes to Frankfurt and head on to Krakow there in Poland. We'll be there for a few days back. So looking forward to joining the delegation there. Again, honored to do it. And in my remarks at some point, I will be sharing some of what we're talking about right now, that today the Third Reich is actually embodied, unfortunately, in the Islamic Republic of Iran, not the Iranian people, but the Ayatollah regime. And so everything from its hatred for Israel and trying to destroy the Jewish people to its desire for its global Islamic caliphate, and its hatred for everyone and anyone who is not from their ilk. They are enemies of Israel. They're enemies of Saudi Arabia, the whole of the Sunni Muslim world, with the exception of those who are part of the Muslim Brotherhood who work with them. So we'll get into a little bit of that on today. I just got off the phone right before we got started here. And again, you guys give me a shout out if you can't hear me okay. I'm talking a little bit more reserved just because I don't want it to be too loud where I am. I'm in a little cubicle, but it's not closed off. I just got off the phone with a Israeli Jewish friend in the Galilee. He's not an officer. He may be an officer. I'm not sure, but he serves in that region. He actually will check in every once in a while. And, he put another young lady on the phone. We talked as well. She lives in the Galilee region as well. I say young lady because I always do that. She's an older woman, but again, it's just a generic term that I use. And we talked about faith, and we talked about just different things, and had a great talk. And we got off the phone. We were getting ready to get off the phone. Me and my friend and I. She put him back on the phone, and he said, "I know you haven't been able to get here yet, and I haven't been able to. Here I am headed to Poland, in order to go. My first trip ever to Europe. I've been." Usually when I'm overseas, I'm either in Africa or in Israel. And so it's fitting that my first trip to Europe be to visit Auschwitz. especially during this time. So my friend said to me, if I'm not here when you get here, I'll make sure that we have some people from our group who, greet you and everything. And what he meant by that is very, if it's not obvious to many of you, uh, he meant that he is serving, there's fighting, and there's a lot of loss there. He said, Pastor Misani, we are losing a lot of our brothers and sisters. Um, the things that the media, of the many things that the media will never tell you, um, that yes, there are casualties, there are Israelis, there are those in Gaza, those in Lebanon. Unfortunately, the media's fixation is to demonize Israel and not tell you about the cost, both civilian and military, that are dying in a war that they did not start. Don't let anybody fool you. Long before you got to October 7th, 2023, Hamas, Islamist Jihad, everything from missiles to tunnels, the same thing with Hezbollah in Lebanon, tunnels, missiles, everything. And October the 7th of last year was the line that was crossed, in which Israel had no choice but to go and rout Hamas in Gaza. And for those of you who don't know, if and were never aware, it wasn't simply the Hamas coming out of Gaza, which is heinous enough, but the very next day, October the 8th, Hezbollah in Lebanon to the north renewed its attacks and more missiles and more. So Israel is fighting a multi-front war, not of its choosing. No matter what the deceivers are trying to make you believe, please understand. Lots of evidence for it. As one of the evidences, there's still over 100 Israeli hostages in Gaza. So for those who claim, we want peace, then if you want peace, then release the hostages. Why? Why won't you? Because those are bargaining chips for you to continue to prolong the war and continue to demonize Israel. So it's been quite a lot. So that wasn't even on the thing on today. Just needed to share that. Again, that just happened a few minutes before I went on. When I got the call, I said, I only have a few minutes because I got to do this. I'm getting ready to go online, and then I got to get on the plane. And but we took a few minutes, and I'm glad we were able to talk. So again, Israeli friends, know that we are praying for you. We are standing with you. And obviously, we want peace in the region. We've been saying this the whole time. There are innocents because of the work of the terrorists, like Hamas, like Islamic Jihad, all being led by the Islamic Republic of Iran. And what we want is peace. Some who believe that because of the former Trump administration, there will be a renewed sense of peace, and God willing, that will be the case. But we continue to fight the fight against the disinformation. Again, on this show, Truth to Power Live, we don't just deal with the Middle East. We deal with the Bible, politics, music, Black American community, family, education, many different topics here. Today, you've seen the title on there. I want to get into this now. Let me say this as in way of introduction too. Again, I'm making sure that I'm not disturbing to people here. I want to give I need to give a biblical prelude to this discussion that we need to have here, because I'm going to no doubt say some things that are going to be somewhat difficult for some to hear, or challenging or whatever. I mean, I'm not saying that because that I think people are afraid or whatever. I just want to put some context to this, because this is very much ministry for me, always, but even more so here now. And that is, I want to refer to, I'm not going to turn to it. You're welcome, Esther. Thank you, Esther, for commenting. So, Esther, I'm assuming you all can hear me okay. Thank you. I'm not going to turn to it, but in the Gospel of the book of John, the first chapter is 19 through 23. We have a snippet of who John, not the writer, but the immerser. John is the son of Zechariah, the high priest, whose birth is also prophesied, as was Jesus's. And he's performing baptisms in the Jordan. And around verse 19 of John 1, the Pharisees come and they are wanting to know by whose authority he's doing what he's doing. Does he claim to be Messiah? And so, well, no, Christians, so we have some context. The Pharisees are doing their job. If there's someone who could appear to be the Messiah, is maybe claiming to be the Messiah or anything around that, or having some sort of unauthorized ministry, or they have some sort of prophetic office that needs to be validated, if you will. The Pharisees, whom Jesus told his disciples, sit in the seat of Moshe. They sit in the seat of Moses. They have been handed down the authority, the spiritual and biblical authority that came from Moses. He just told them, because many of them are hypocrites. He said, don't do what they do what they say. Jesus was not blasting the Pharisaic order. He was not coming against priests. He wasn't kind of coming against rabbis. He was calling out the hypocrisy. He was calling out the corruption. And so he said, don't do what they do, but follow their instructions. So anyway, by the authority that they received from Moses, they're asking John these questions. And John quotes for them out of Isaiah 53. They asked, who are you? He said, I am a voice crying in the wilderness. Let the church say amen. Okay. Make straight the way of the Lord. John told them, no, I'm not Messiah. Later on, he goes and he speaks of in his own humility. I am not worthy to untie his sandals. When Jesus comes to the story goes, he comes to the Jordan River. Next chapter, John says, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. John points to him and said, this is the Messiah that we've been waiting for. And he says, I'm not worthy to untie his sandals. Why am I referencing that? John lets them know that he is aware of what his role is. His role is to be a herald, Hearld, an announcer. He is operating in the office of prophet. It was Jesus who venerated John's ministry and said he was the greatest of the prophets. This is something, again, in the New Testament. John is operating as a prophet, saying what thus saith the Lord. And he is the prophet then. One of the reasons why Jesus pointed to him as the quote unquote greatest is that he immediately precedes Messiah coming. In other words, like Jeremiah, immediately preceded the destruction of Jerusalem. He prophesied that Nebuchadnezzar was coming. He was not the only one, but he let them know, and it was happening in their time. It was real time. Jeremiah lived to see the destruction of Jerusalem. He also prophesied of the restoration of it. So I'm saying all that to say, it is in that vein that there are some things that I have to say that that's not, I don't think I'm some sort of prophet. That's not it. I'm talking about the function, the actual function. My job, as many others, is to point to, in this space right here, point to some things and say, okay, boom, this is what this is. And John, it's funny, the end that he met was that he was decapitated because Herod's daughter asked for the head of John, the quote unquote Baptist. We call him Baptist, but John, once his ministry was done, he left unceremoniously, though Jesus himself eulogized him. The voice crying in the wilderness, which is what John's referring to, Yeshayahu the prophet. He's saying, I am that voice crying in the wilderness. Make straight the way of the Lord. You have come in contact with those voices throughout your life. As a Christian, as a Jew, you heard a rabbi, an elder, a pastor, a deacon, someone significant in your life say something to you that was as important as anything you had ever heard. It was an announcement to you, maybe to your family, maybe to your community. Something that was being said that even though many may not have heard it at the time, it was as important as anything that they had heard to that point. if you have that personal testimony, you know that there are times that may have happened to you. Maybe you heeded it and you followed a different path. Maybe it was just an encouragement to you to keep following the path that you were on. And unfortunately, maybe you ignored it only to regret. If I was in a church somewhere, in a synagogue somewhere, I would say, show of hands of those you who got a voice from the wilderness and didn't actually listen to it only to regret. So here in this space of swift transition, and I'm a lot of this is opening. I'm going to do this as swiftly as I can, but I need to set some context here. Again, you go to TTP Live, you can see the other episodes that may be referenced here. You can check out this. This is going live right now. And then if I can do it before I get on the plane, I'll put it on the podcast. If not, I'll have to do it when I land in Germany en route to Poland. So that having been said, as a voice crying in the wilderness, let me deal with this part. There is among the other roles and titles that I play, I am the founder and the CEO of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. That's actually the capacity in which I'm traveling to Poland now as the CEO of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, as a speaker, as a contributor on this panel. There again, and an honor to go at what is already a just an intense time here. Just some meetings, it's a lot of things I can't get into right now. But again, this just happened to fit on the calendar. There's some things I couldn't do even last week. I couldn't even get to California last week to see one of my nieces just got married. A couple of our daughters went as representatives from us, but my wife and I were not able to go. And then this trip had been slipped in. It's a long story. So I want to, after all that introduction, start here. It's an article that I wrote for the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel's Substack. It's called Africa Israel Weekly. I think I have it on there. I can show with you a little bit of a clip, or not a clip, but the actual a couple of quotes from it. But I'll do that in a second. You can go to ibsi.org, and you can check out this that you see there. It is entitled "The Iranian Regime's Increased Focus on the Black Community." The Iranian regime's increased focus on the Black community. I'm going to see if I can do this a different way here. Yep. So ibsi.org. I'm referencing that. I'll read something from. As a matter of fact, I quote in that article several times from different sources. One of those is Memory, Middle East Reporting Institute. I think I'm saying that the right way, but you'll see that too, because I want to share that with you. I'm going to, from there, let me, my son is the executive director of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. And if you go on, we have a forum. It's called the Forum on Israel, Africa, and Black America, live every Monday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern. He actually shared a clip that I'm going to share now. This clip is actually, the words in this clip are actually quoted in the piece that I wrote about Iran. I encourage you to read the article. I won't break it down here now, but if you go to Substack, again, ibsi.substack.com, you can check it out. I encourage you to read it. It is a synopsis. It could have been more. We'll probably say some more about it later on. Iran's foray into the Black community, into the African community, especially the African religious community, is not new, but it has been ramped up. It has been emboldened by a weak US administration, which we'll talk about that in a moment as well, because I got some stuff to say about the Democratic Party. Let me say it right now, I'll come back to it. It has become the US Islamist Party. There's all kinds of evidence for it. And for my Democrat friends, again, who say, well, I stand with Israel, you're not right. No, I am right. The receipts are there. You may be the anomaly, but make absolutely no mistake. The Democratic Party of today is facilitating the jihad that's happening in the United States and other parts of the world, including in Africa. We have receipts. I'll show you that in a minute. But anyway, lots of receipts. We don't have time to even do it today. But I'm going to show you a little of this clip. This is one of the intellectual leaders there in Iran, and he's talking specifically about how to effectively exploit the Black community for the purposes of destroying the United States. Now, this was nothing new, but this particular video, it's about 4 years old, but the mindset is in this. When you read the article, this goes back to the PLO in the late 1960s. The PLO began to reach out to the Black community for the purposes of galvanizing support against Israel, the Black community and the Africans as well, and did it worldwide. But particularly its focus in the West was the Black American community, so that it could portray itself as itself, meaning the PLO, the Palestine Liberation Organization, as a civil rights branch fighting for justice when it was really just trying to destroy Jews. Nothing has changed over the past almost 60 years. That's what Hamas does, Palestinian Authority does, and the Democratic Party, more than any other, has been empowering them to do it. Matter of fact, the Biden administration just cut another check, if you want to use that term, $220 million more dollars for the Palestinian Authority. Who's already paying the people who did the October the 7th. It's inexplicable. People are asking me, why are they doing this? Because they've become the Islamist Party. Why would you give hundreds of millions and billions of dollars to Islamists who say they're going to kill Israelis? It's just not rocket science, ladies and gentlemen. And it's also the military industrial complex. Why? Because then we fund Israel. We have a military relationship with Israel, and we wave our banners, say, oh, how much we stand with Israel, and we give Israel's enemies money. And that's yeah. So I want you to check out this clip a little bit here. And it's in subtitles, and you'll see he's speaking in Farsi.
اینا یک کمی شل بشه آمریکا یک کشوریه که به سرعت تجزیه میشه. من دو سه بار رفتم، همینجوری نمیگم، دو سه بار که رفتم آمریکا تو سمینارها با تیپ‌های مختلف حرف زدم، اصلا یک لایه‌هایی از نفرت و تردید و بیگانگی در اونجا هست.
Now, I'm going to do this here. I'm going to start again from the beginning because I'm going to pause when he said this. If you're listening to it and you can't see it, I want you to. We have to make our presence felt in the conflicts in America that involve Blacks and people of color. Again, this is Hassan Ramapour Azgadi, member of the Iranian Supreme Council for Cultural Revolution, January 2020. There's fertile ground for this. With regard to the American people, let me tell you this. If their media fabric and oppressing structures loosen a bit, America is the kind of country that will disintegrate quickly. I'm not just saying this. I've traveled to America 2 or 3 times, and he goes, I'm not going to continue to go on there for me. Give me to talk about some more details about his trip to America. What is he saying? He's saying America is ripe for destruction if we pull on the right threads. And the thread we must focus on the most is the Black American community. Oh, we're just getting started. He says, in order for us to take down America, we should use Black people. And he says in a very specific way, I'm going to go a bit further because there's another person. So that was 2020, a couple of years ago. Now, again, he's part of the Iranian Supreme Council. So he's not just talking, some guy on the street. He's talking about the plan that's coming from the top, which is the Ayatollahs. How do we cause destabilization and try to destroy one of our arch enemies, the United States? I know they said, we will focus on the Black American community. We will focus on whatever we see as wrong, whatever can be exploited, and we will use them to destroy the country. Black Lives Matter. We will use the dead bodies of Trayvon Martin and Michael Brown and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and on and on and on, not to seek justice, not to seek political police reform. We want to burn it down, which is why they'll protest. There'll be some legit folks protesting. You have other folks burning down police precincts. Why? Because they don't give a rat's patootie about fixing anything or helping anything. They are just trying. That's why Patrice Cullors, the founder of Black Lives Matter, and says, we are trained Marxists. Marxists do not care about justice. They care about rule, like a global caliphate. Let's use the Black American community. Let's go a bit further. I quote this particular gentleman in my article, ibsi.substack.com, about Israel. So I'm going to, I don't think there's a video of it. There's the actual slides. Okay. So what I have here, that's the screen grab of the memory article, memory.org. Again, Middle East, I think it's Middle East Media and Reporting Institute, if I'm not mistaken, but you can go there, memri.org. And this person here is Iranian analyst Mohammed Morandi. And he, like the other gentleman, it's a different gentleman, is speaking specifically about the Black community. Now, this is done in an article. It's a video that you can see. You go to Memory's website, they go to their also to their YouTube page. But I want to quote for you, because the quote that I'm going to share with you that Mr. Morandi speaks is one of the quotes that I share in the IBSI article. Quote, in many of America's deprived cities and areas, they call them slums. The schools are really bad and are not safe. Students, again, these are Iranian leaders speaking about the Black American community. Students simply move on to the next grade. Their reading and writing skills are at the level of second or third grade in Iran. They really cannot read properly, so they are poor and deprived. They cannot enroll in a university. They did not attend a proper school. Continuing the quote, this is him quoting, I'm quoting this gentleman from Iran. The TV constantly tells them that they are violent smugglers, dancers, and so forth. Well, this is the result. All they have left is sports. Obviously, I'm not saying that they are all like that. Some of the Blacks are in middle class, some have gotten rich, some have become university professors, and some of them become like Mr. Obama. Some of them become like Mr. Obama. But Obama himself has joined the establishment and has become one of them. So now we need to unpack this a little bit, because this goes beyond just the quote. I make this point in the article, but I'm gonna, since we're here together, let me go further here. The gentleman is doing two separate things. This is part of how disinformation and propaganda works. He is actually stating truths for the purpose of demonization and destruction. It's like the nature of Satan himself. He may say something to you that is factual, but for the purpose of destroying you. For example, you may be, and I use Satan, a bad person, a person with ill intent. Right? What do I mean by that? Again, it could be spiritual. It could be somebody naturally doing something spiritual, where they say to you, you know what, Johnny, you know what, Susan, you know what, Letitia, whatever, you've really sacrificed. Mm-hmm. You've put out a lot. Mm-hmm. You really, really work hard. Mm-hmm. And they're really not appreciating you. Now, everything they could be saying is true. What you should do is go off on them. You walk in them and you tell them to stop. What that person that's manipulating Johnny or Jane or Letitia is doing. They are stating what's true in order to get a visceral reaction from the person, and then attempting to steer them in a wrong direction. They have been unfair to you, or this has been a great cause of a great deal of sacrifice from you, or whatever. Therefore, you should, go take a bat and go sort of beside somebody's head. What this person is saying is true. I write about it in my book. As of 2017, the illiteracy rate among Black boys in California's public school system was 75%. Over the past 7, now almost 8 years, nationwide public school systems, Black boys in particular, are at illiteracy rates of 85% and more, meaning functionally illiterate, meaning they don't read at grade level. They're in the 9th, 10th, 11th grade, and they're reading at the 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade level. So what he's saying is factually true. And it's not just the Black American community. I mean, literacy rates across the board, unfortunately, many demographics is down in the United States. That's a whole discussion about the public school system, family, all this. There's a lot that's there to unpack. But I'm focusing on this main thing here. He is telling the audience and telling other leaders, remember the first thing we watched, the video, he was saying we should exploit the Black community for the purposes of destroying the United States of America. And this particular one, the clip that we just read from there, and again, it's in my article that I talk about in a broader context. He says, many of them attend poor schools. They can't read. They don't have a lot of options. And the media tells them they should be, either dancers, and I'm wrong be a dancer, but they don't have any options. Dancers or smugglers, meaning drug dealers, right? So, also true. The media constantly portrays negative stereotypes in general, but especially, but I could talk about this for the longest. We go back and check out some of the other episodes when I talked about the 1974 hit sitcom Good Times, and then also the movie Claudine. I think I discussed it on some of the podcasts here, and I've also discussed it on our show called the Superheroes. That one of the main bones of contention throughout the decades when it comes to Hollywood, when it comes to movies, television, everything, is that too often, Black characters are either pigeonholed, stereotyped, or and just all around presented as either negative or, again, as a stereotypical. This person's a drug dealer, this person's a pimp, this person's a basketball player, whatever. Nothing's wrong with being a basketball player. That's not my point. My point is that the horizons are given that are so narrow. I don't know if I told this story before. Did I tell this story? Goodness gracious, I don't have time to do the stories thing. I know I'm on a clock here. So I may have told this story before. I don't know. I may have done it on another episode. If so, please forgive me. Which one am I going to tell here? Yeah, my son. So years ago, my son, Joshua, he was he went to UOP, University Pacific in Stockton, and he was part of the Christian campus group called InterVarsity. Some of you may remember InterVarsity. I mean, they still exist. No, they don't exist anymore. I'm just saying, you have chosen that age, or some of you may have been part of InterVarsity, may be part of it now. And they had what's called a global trek. They would send kids off to different parts of the world who would then both help in whatever the community it was and also share the gospel. Joshua's assignment, he and a group went to Cairo, Egypt, and they worked in a Sudanese refugee camp. Yes, Sudanese refugee camp. Joshua's job was to teach English to this class of boys, and then also a team that would share the gospel with them, pray with them, lead them to the Lord. Right? When they saw that Joshua was a Black American, the first thing they wanted to know was which gang he was a member of. Mind you, these are Sudanese refugees in Egypt. They fled their nation because of war and all kinds of instability. And so now they're there temporarily until they're found other homes and everything. And these boys, as poor as many of them were, obviously destitute in the sense of not being home and everything, but they had gotten a healthy dose of American television to the degree that when they saw my son, a Black American boy, young man, all they saw was a gang member, a son of an illegitimate. They wanted to know. First of all, they wanted to know what gang he was a part of. He told them he wasn't in a gang. They want to know about his family. When they told him he has his mother and father, he's raised by his kids. This has happened many times. They don't believe him. They don't believe that he knows his father. They don't believe nothing about Joshua's life was real to them, because to them, a Black male was a gang member, a drug dealer, someone who did not know his father, someone who came from a broken home, from a broken society, and that doesn't exist, but that was it to them. Now, how are these kids who've never set foot in the United States of America, who are from this region of Africa, whether in Sudan, now they're in Egypt, how do they have all of this stereotypical negative information, television, movies, music videos, everything, and unfortunately, too often, other members in the Black community reinforcing those same stereotypes while complaining about the stereotypes that actually exist. Why do I say all of that to you? Here is one of the Iranian leaders correctly explaining the state of many Black poor and working poor and even some working class in terms of the educations that they are receiving. Now, he even said it. If you saw the clip, the article, the excerpt I was reading, he even said himself, he says, I'm not saying they're all like that. So he even gave his disclaimer. He said, no, he said, I'm not saying that all Black Americans can't read. What he's saying is that there is a large contingent there that have been so disaffected, we can use that. He's saying here is the reality for many young Black people. And he's not saying, now let's come together and teach them. No, he's saying what we need to do is stir up more strife there so that we can destroy. Now, I say this in the article, I'm just back to say this here. Iran is not only the #1 state sponsor of terrorism, it has an atrocious record when it comes to human rights in its own country. They kill, torture, imprison anyone who comes against the regime, who speaks out against the regime. There's no open access to Facebook and X and Instagram and none of those types of things. And the Iranian people, God love them, have been standing as much as they can in resistance to this hateful regime that has been destroying them and seeks to destroy the Jewish people and destroy anyone who gets in their way. The first casualties of this regime is its own people. They'll hang dissidents from cranes. The one young lady, I can't remember her name right now, and I didn't really bring it up here. It was this iconic moment a couple of years ago. She was killed by their morality police because she wasn't wearing her hijab the right way. You're talking about one of the most repressive regimes on the planet. So why are they involving themselves with Black Americans? Because they care? Of course they don't care. Again, it's already been stated. They're wanting to destroy America, and they're wanting to use Black Americans, especially poor, those who, again, like these kids who are in school who can't read. He's correctly assessing the state of what's happening in America for the purpose of exploitation. I mentioned this, and I'm not going to have time to do here because this is almost like a part one. It has to go further from here. In the article, and you'll see it in there, one of the Iranian regime's favorite tools is Louis Farrakhan, the minister of the leader of Nation of Islam, who has traveled to Iran multiple times. And one of the links that I put in there, he was there, it was about 2018, I believe, one of the last times. Though he denies it, we have video of him helping lead the chants, death to Israel, death to America. Yep, we have it. Said he didn't, but it's right there. He would say the first term in Farsi, death to, and then they would say in their language, America, death to. So basically, you hip hip hooray, you're doing the same thing. You're leading the chant out. Much of the rhetoric that comes out from the Nation of Islam is co-signed, or at the very least applauded, by Iran. I used the example in the piece there that during the times of even more political and racial unrest here, Iran would take it upon itself to weigh in, giving a thumbs up to Black Lives Matter, the whole thing. Again, they don't care any more than Al Jazeera when they're reporting on it. They don't care. They are using legit situations for the purpose of exploitation. One of the things I say in the piece is that one of the things that it tells us, I don't care if you're Black, white, Jewish, non-Jewish, whoever you are, that everyone who says that they're your friend or concerned about you is not telling the truth. And then even deeper, it speaks to the dangers of a prevailing victim mentality. To acknowledge that there are challenges, to acknowledge that there has been a difficult history, to acknowledge that there are some blockages, to acknowledge whether they be racial, whether they be socioeconomic, whatever. That's one thing. But to lament those things and wallow in those things and not, especially from the outside, and not offer direction. Okay, here are the reading. I made the point, I think it's maybe 2 weeks ago in the episode, maybe a couple weeks ago, maybe last week, I don't remember, I'm sorry. And check them all out, ttplive.com. That one of the reasons why Trump won is that he received the majority of the parent vote. Arab parents, Jewish parents, Black parents, Hispanic parents, parents of school-aged children who are tired of the BS and the silliness in these schools and want their kids to learn. So these parents are taking it upon themselves to exercise their school choice. If I then, listen to me, progressives, if I'm going to then point out all the this is not unfair, all the performance gaps, right? And oh boy, and this is not fair. And people talk about, if I'm going to sit there and lament about it, but then I don't have a real solution other than giving the public school system more money, that's not what the problem is, then I am also manipulating and exploiting people so I can feel good about myself. Let me complain about, I told you CNN about a year ago. CNN doesn't support, there's not enough Black doctors. There should be more Black doctors. This is, they don't know how racist America is, right? At the same time, doctors come from medical school, come from graduate schools, come from undergraduate schools, come from high school. If I can't read, if you're talking about levels of 85% illiteracy among Black boys, and then you want to get up on CNN and talk about how there's not enough Black doctors, why don't we start from the beginning? How do you become a doctor if you can't read? The answer to that question is you can't. So if you're going to be concerned about how many quote unquote Black people are in a specific industry or a specific field, you should be concerned about the public school or the schooling that many of the children, especially in poor neighborhoods, have access to, and how they are often not preparing those kids for real life. Either that or shut up. If you're going to actually talk about who's not here in the professional realm, but not actually deal with primary education, then it's a complete disconnect and it's a complete manipulation. Even if you don't believe that's what you're doing, that's exactly what it is manipulation. So let's get really stirred up about there's not enough Black doctors, but we're not going to talk about how these kids can't read, many of them in these school districts. And again, like the guy from Ron says, I'm not saying it's all, he's plenty of Black folks are doing just well. They're doing just fine. He said, but there is this group who've been left behind. Oh my goodness, I'm running out of time here because I'm having to. So let me do this. I made this statement. I'm gonna have to finish here in the beginning because I gotta finish with this. I gotta turn the page. I said to you that unfortunately, I'm not trying to be partisan, just trying to be real. Maybe I give you that whole thing about John the Baptist, right? Voice cry in the wilderness. Democrat friends, it's a postmortem. So let me tell you what it's about. I said before, the Democratic Party has become the US Islamist Party, has become the facilitators for the Muslim Brotherhood, the Islamic Republic of Iran, you name it. That's not fair. I'm not care about being fair. I'm care about being right. I'm being correct. I'm trying to actually, it's not about fair. Let's not hurt anybody's feelings. What I'm concerned about is about justice. So I need you to see this here. I want to show you this clip. Caroline Glick, a friend and a colleague, several weeks ago, she did this particular story about what was going on in Israel as it pertains to UNRWA. Check this out for me, please. Let me see. I hope I can do this right. Well, let's see.
After October 7th, the United States, along with a lot of other countries, announced that they were going to stop funding UNRWA. This was something that the Biden administration desperately didn't want to do. They give UNRWA close to $1 billion a year. They wanted to keep funding it, but they couldn't because, hello, it's a terrorist organization. But they
UNRWA is, again, it's, you don't know, it's an acronym for the United Nations Relief Works Agency for the Palestinian Refugees. It's the only United Nations, the only UN body that is designated for only one group of refugees, which is the Palestinians.
They have since stated that they want to renew the funding regardless, and they've been taking concerted steps to block Israel from pushing UNRWA out of the business of distributing the.
And it's completely infiltrated by Hamas. It's just another UN body that facilitates for Hamas, gets money from Hamas, has Hamas employees. There's actually hostages that were found in UNRWA employees' homes and everything.
Humanitarian aid. Well, the Knesset finally had enough of this garbage, and Likud MKs Yuli Edelstein and Boaz Bismuth put out this bill that called for making UNRWA illegal and making it them and barring them from operating in Israel. And guess what? On Tuesday, the bill passed the Knesset nearly unanimously. Out of 120 people, nobody voted against it. And that's that. Bye-bye. Except what happened? The Biden-Harris administration, Tony Blinken's State Department, went bananas. Tony Blinken was here last week. He reportedly discussed the legislation with the prime minister. They signed this letter on October 13th where they threatened an arms embargo against Israel if Israel blocked humanitarian aid to Gaza. And they said, among other things, that passing the UNRWA law was going to undermine the distribution of humanitarian aid, indicating very clearly that if the Knesset dared to ban UNRWA from operating in Israel, that the United States was going to place a full embargo on arms sales, arms deliveries to Israel. Okay? And so what they're doing is actively protecting a terrorist organization.
What they're doing is actively protecting a terrorist organization. Let me say what Caroline said again. What the Biden administration, which is policy from the DNC, they are actively protecting Hamas. Not only are they not trying to see Hamas defeated, not only are they not trying to see Hamas come to a, peace negotiation by releasing the hostages, they are protecting Hamas from being thwarted by Israel. As soon as I saw Caroline's report on that, my mind went immediately to about 10, 11, was it 13 years ago now, during the Obama administration. Everybody remember Bring Out Our Girls? Bring Back Our Girls? Turn to your neighbor and say, Bring Back Our Girls. During the time of the rise of Boko Haram in Nigeria, this was during the time when Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State under Obama, then later on John Kerry, both of these administrations, right? 1 and 2. They began to lament. Michelle Obama very famously held up a sign, Bring Back Our Girls, lamenting them. The reality of it is this was actually created by the mess was created by the Democrats. This is an article that was written by Ibrahim. I can't remember his first name. You can see it right here. I'm going to give you a little clip of it. You get it yourself here. It's the Middle East Forum, written by, again, Raymond Ibrahim on May the 15th, 2014, more than 10 years ago. Let me see. This is not the beginning of it here. We go, okay, now. This is a club. Now, the title of the article is Nigerian Sex Slaves Disrupt Obama Narrative on Islam. Right? Here, meaning the religion of peace, just this whole blanket statement, right? Watch this clip. Quote, back then in May 2013, a year before the writing of this article, soon after Nigerian forces killed 30 Boko Haram members. They were already a problem back then. Reuters reported that U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry issued a strongly worded statement to the Nigerian president saying, quote, we are deeply concerned by credible allegations that Nigerian security forces are committing gross human rights violations, which in turn only escalate the violence and fuel extremism from Boko Haram. In other words, you are violating Boko Haram's rights, human rights, by killing them. You're killing terrorists, therefore you're not fair. Let me keep going. Perhaps this sheds more light on why, quote, repeated offers of the U.S. assistance regarding the kidnapped girls were ignored by Nigeria. In other words, once the girls were kidnapped, the Obama administration reached out and said, oh, will you let us help? But Nigeria basically said, no, we got it. We're good. We're good, son. Thanks. Until Kerry got on the phone, whatever that means. As for Kerry's predecessor, Hillary Clinton, who is now bemoaning the lot of the kidnapped girls in Nigeria, saying it's abominable, it's criminal, it's an act of terrorism, it really merits the fullest response possible, yada, yada, yada. He doesn't say yada, I said that. When she was Secretary of State and in a position to help offer the fullest response possible, Clinton repeatedly refused to designate Boko Haram as a foreign terrorist organization. Despite the countless atrocities it had already committed, despite the fact that it had boasted it would strike fear into the Christians of the power into the Christians of the power of Islam by kidnapping their women, as it has, and despite urging from the CIA, FBI, Justice Department, and several congressmen and senators, they refused to allow, at that time, the administration of Goodluck Jonathan, who was the president of Nigeria at the time, to designate Boko Haram as a terrorist organization. They ran interference for Boko Haram back in 2013. the same way they're running interference for Hamas right now. And the receipts go on and on. I'm gonna have to stop here in a minute and head for my gate. This is just the beginning. I mean, I could go on and on and on. You know what? Just goodness gracious. And then we told us about the college campus. Oh, the campuses are really bad. This is an article that came out a couple weeks ago from Washington Free Beacon, titled "The Best Strategies to Keep Its Heads Down." Schumer advised Columbia's leaders to ignore the anti-Semitism backlash, saying that their problems are really only among Republicans. See, this is not me saying this. The real problem that's going on the college campuses is the fact that Republicans keep pissing and moaning about anti-Semitism on college campuses. There's way more. So when I say that the Democratic Party has become the US Islamist Party, and this, we could just do a whole show on receipts. Maybe next week we'll pick up from there. I'm just giving you a couple of examples. When I saw Caroline Glick explain what the Biden administration was doing to protect Hamas, the first thing that came to my mind was what the Obama administration did to protect Boko Haram, while they sat there and clutched their pearls. Oh my God, the girls. And in Super Black Solidarity with Israel, you'd have to go to our website. You can go to our YouTube page, ibsi.org on our homepage. You go to the YouTube page. You'll find one of the videos we put on there. Some of the girls who returned after having been kidnapped, who never did return, they believe that a couple of them a few months ago came to a wedding celebration somewhere in Nigeria as suicide bombers. They haven't seen those girls until they came, hadn't seen those girls till they came. And before it was that level of problem, Nigeria tried to nip it in the bud. And the Democrats told them, you are violating Boko Haram's rights by killing them. Israel decides that UNRWA is completely infested with Hamas. We're not going to allow them to operate anymore. Here comes again, Democrats again. You can't do that. That's not fair. So on that happy note, it's funny. I meant to share with you all this thing. I don't think I did last week, and I apologize for it because we were trying to get this stuff together in the airport. I'm just grateful we were able to at least broadcast some, but I am going to have to bounce here in a second. But there was a video that I wanted to share about Save a Child's Heart. I don't know if I shared that one before. I may not be able to this time. I'm gonna have to go ahead and end it. So my apologies, because I wanted to share that and everything too. I don't want to end on a bad note. And let me just say this. It is a challenging time. Just as Israel is fighting its war, I said this before, it's fighting its military war, and with great sacrifice and great cost, it is winning. The West is losing its ideological war against the same Islamist ideology. God say the same. In a few hours, I'll get off the plane in Poland. I'll meet the delegation there as we go to Auschwitz, as we have this conversation. And my little contribution as John crying in the wilderness, I'm going to share with them. And not to any way, we're going to be observing, being on this hallowed ground, Auschwitz, and what happened as a symbol of what happened throughout Nazi Europe. And talk about how this fight right now, this is global again. And what has started with the Jewish people, as Rabbi Jonathan Sachs says, is in no way, it's spreading. So we need to come together. So let us be encouraged by the fact that we come together and fight against this evil. Light will always prevail against darkness. It will always. And even when we're speaking difficult truths, like I just had to do just now, we have to do some more. This is the only way we move forward. We have to actually embrace what's true. All right. So I gotta go. I wanted to do another thing, but again, I'm just grateful that we're able to do the little that we were able to do here. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate everybody. I hopefully we'll see you again on next week. Everybody have a great week. Thanks a lot now.
Truth to Power Live with Jimmy Sally Washington.